host, Corie. Thanks for being here. Another episode, another week. I am definitely feeling a rhythm, and that's really nice. There's something about this that feels quite effortless. And the weekly pace is really working well for me. I have been able to just sort of relax a little bit, and to produce one episode a week is just the right amount of creative engagement, the right amount of work. I would say that I'm still finding my way with promotion and how to market this podcast, how to get it into as many ears as possible. And yeah, social media can feel quite full, like it can feel quite hard at times. Like it can feel like a lot of work. And so far, that's like the only way that I've really known how to promote a podcast. I have no idea how the algorithm of podcasting works. And the other thing I've been really, I've been trying to get a lot more comfortable with just sharing it, like verbally promoting the podcast and bringing it up in conversation with friends and family, and just dropping it kind of into conversation. And that can feel a little, just like a little nerve-wracking at times. I did actually tell my therapist that was something that I had been putting off. It's so funny. It's just all wrapped up in some people pleasing. I was so afraid of judgment and how she might receive that information, and what she might be thinking about it. And I mean, it was the opposite of that. Obviously, she's a therapist. She's there to support me. I have no control or no idea what, her inner narrative was and what she left that conversation thinking about. But I think she saw it as a good way of processing all my thoughts and feelings. And she reminded me that one of my core values is connection, and that this is an avenue towards connection. And so she can understand the significance and the importance of the work. And for me, that was just good to keep that in mind, keep that at the core of what I'm doing here. That is why I'm doing this. It's to raise awareness, bring people pleasing into the conversation, allow for people to feel seen or heard, and to hopefully just be helpful in some kind of way. So I wanted to start off with a little check-in on my people pleasing this week before I dive into today's topic. And I've mentioned before on the podcast that I've just recently moved into a new space, and that I'm getting this like really good deal. I've actually moved into the basement suite of my friend's mom. So we have an existing relationship, and we are moving into a new relationship, one where she is my landlord and I pay her money. So there is a bit of a transactional component to the relationship. And I am navigating some boundaries with this new relationship, this like how our relationship is evolving. And that is around her requests for some dog sitting and dog walking of her dog. And when I set out to meet with her initially to look at the place, periodic dog walking kind of came up when she saw that the dog, kind of took a liking to me, and I love dogs, and it was an easy observation to be like, oh, you like dogs. My dog likes you. Maybe you could spend some time with him sometimes. And it was just sort of a, yep, yeah, cool, totally. And I stand by that. That is something that I'm into that. And so this past weekend, she did ask me to dog sit, and the conversation of compensation came up. And I dog sit for other people, and there's always a financial compensation, as there should be. And so as this dog sitting weekend approached, the conversation of compensation came up, and she asked me if I had any thoughts on what that would look like. And she had mentioned that she was kind of rethinking her original compensation, leading me to believe that she was thinking of lowering it. And the reason I think that is because she said, I am giving you a really good deal on rent. So that was initially, I was quite disappointed in that, because I see the dog sitting and my rent as being mutually exclusive. Those two things, in my opinion, should be treated separately. And from that conversation, I understood that she sees them as having a relationship, and there is some sort of, like a little bit of a expectation on her end. And so I did take some time to think about my response, and I shared with her what I am typically compensated, and I said, I want to recognize that you are giving me a good deal. I also want to recognize my time. And so I suggested 50% of what I typically am paid. And she agreed. So, I actually, I don't know, like, you could argue that I did people please in that I reduced the rate. You could also say that I actually was practicing some boundaries there and sticking to the fact that I do deserve compensation, but that I do want to like honor the relationship, and I do want there to be like a win-win outcome, and that I don't want to take her for granted, and I do want her to feel that I am grateful. But it's that tricky balance, right? It's like I shouldn't be expected to be like overly grateful forever, like, oh my God, I'm getting the best deal. It's like, no, I'm getting the deal that you offered. You decided that rate, and this isn't just specific to this dynamic. Of course, that's the one I'm unpacking right now, but I can imagine, and I know from my husband, like being a small business owner, you're constantly up against like advocating for yourself and stating your worth, and being okay with that, being confident in that. But for me, I also had to just check myself to be like, okay, am I kind of responding in sort of a triggered way? Like, am I feeling like, oh no, my boundaries are going to get crossed and I need to kind of come up with these like really rigid guidelines? Or is there an opportunity to be a bit more flexible and to lean into the relationship and see how can both our needs be met? So that was this week. A little bit of a roller coaster, but we got there. Sorry, that clanging is the metal straw in my cup. Big focus these days is hydration. So today I want to talk about saying sorry. And it's so funny because I actually feel like I am not approaching this conversation as the people pleaser. I feel like I am approaching this conversation from being on the receiving end of people pleasing, because I think I've spent enough time in the sorry space where I've actually changed some of my behaviors and patterns, and I've moved away from people pleasing in this instance. So I have noticed that there is a tendency for people pleasers or people with anxiety to really overdo their sorries. And yeah, it's almost like when someone is late or there's some minor inconvenience, or, there's something that may, on some level, maybe reflect poorly on that person, like say arriving late to a meeting, that there is then this like production of apologies, like this profusely apologizing, making this big scene. And it's like, we're okay. You're okay. Are you okay? And I have found that I think I can be kind of critical on this behavior because I see former versions of myself in it. And my take on it is that when people enter spaces with this big song and dance, this big apology party, I just made that up, that it's like you're not actually even apologizing. Like in those moments, you are not, this is my perception, you're not actually concerned for our well-being or our experience at all. All of these sorries, all of these apologies is to protect the perception of you, to to protect your own ego. And what it ends up doing is it puts all of us on the receiving end of those sorries in this like caregiver role where we are now massaging your ego, letting you know it's okay, like tending to your anxiety, tending to your needs. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, now here we are. You were the one who was late. And, we were all willing to move past that. But now it's this big thing where there's all this additional conversation, all this additional like energy being put into like reassuring you that it's okay, that we're okay. And I'm not here to demonize or to like punish those of us who are still kind of in these patterns, but I do want to raise that awareness that like one sorry is sufficient. Acknowledge, hey, sorry I'm late, and just move on. Because not only are you late, but now with this big song and dance, you're actually making us run even later. Like you're tying us up even further. You're taking up way more time and energy than necessary. And yeah, I want to raise that awareness because why are you apologizing so much? Why do you feel that these small instances, these small patterns or these small behaviors, these small moments deserve such a production? this is what I think. I think that, and I know from my own experience that, and I'll use, showing up to a meeting late as an example, because that's one that I know for me, I do get triggered when I'm late. Like my anxiety gets triggered. I do not like being late. So if I'm putting myself in that position, I'm in my car, if traffic goes perfectly, I will get there with 20 seconds to spare. But of course, I'm in my car, I'm hitting red light after red light after red light. There's somehow 15 school zones on my way to this meeting. There's people who don't know how to merge. Like every traffic challenge is at play. My road rage, it's coming up. It's bubbling. It's showing itself. And I am in this like clenched, like angry, anxious, panicked state. So I'm in it. I am going through it. And all the while, my inner dialogue is, you should have gotten up early, or you should have spent less time staring at your phone this morning. You should have just sent a text to say, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. You shoulda, you shoulda, you shoulda. So there's this like berating, this internal berating where I'm just not being my own best friend. And I am just like drenched in this really toxic, like negative, self-judging, self-critical headspace. And I show up to the meeting and I'm late. I'm showing up to the meeting, and the socially acceptable thing to do is to say sorry, to acknowledge that you're late in some kind of way. However, now my nervous system needs to be soothed. I'm looking for someone to now take care of me. I'm looking to have someone acknowledge the challenges that I just faced, the hardship that I just went through. I want people to know exactly why I'm late. And the more I say sorry, the more I'm getting told I'm okay, you're okay. And you know what? I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel, okay, my nervous system is kind of settling down. My stress is subsiding. But you know what? I'm going to say sorry one more time because I didn't quite get enough. I need a little bit more. And so I am not aware of this in the moment, but I am latching on to this like social norm of apologizing to get my needs met, to be cared for. And so I bring this up to challenge you and your thinking around this, because maybe this is a pattern that sounds a little familiar, that you could maybe recognize in yourself. And so I think there's two things that can happen. One is internal and one is hopefully external. The internal is just like, maybe in that car ride, reframing some of that narrative of like, okay, this is not an emergency. I am okay. Everyone in that meeting is okay without me for a few minutes. Life happens. I fucked up. I will try to, arrange my day a little bit better next time. And just like give yourself that grace, give yourself that moment of just being like, oh, have I even taken one single breath in this car ride? No, let's maybe just take a breath. Let's laugh. Another red light. This is ridiculous. So that frantic, stressed energy, it can come down. It can come down in a moment, in a low stakes moment like this. I trust that we can bring it down a notch. And in doing so, you're now arriving with a little bit more self-compassion. So you're not going to be looking outward for that nurturing in the same way, because you've just spent a little bit of time giving that back to yourself in the car. You just like gave yourself a little hug, a little squeeze, and you can say, hey, sorry for being late. What'd I miss? Or, hey, sorry for being late. I'm here now. Or, hey, sorry for being late. Maybe you can catch me up on what I missed after the meeting. That's it. The external action or change that could happen is, for those of you who are listening and maybe recognize someone in your life who has these patterns, who's like always apologizing, and you find yourself being like, you don't need to apologize. Don't worry about it. If you find yourself saying that, like, especially if you're saying that to the same person repeatedly, you now maybe have a new awareness or perspective of, hey, they're maybe just going through it. They're going through something. They were probably really hard on themselves this morning, or, they're just arriving with a certain emotional energy that maybe just needs a little bit of nurturing. So is there a way we can respond that is A, compassionate, and B, letting them know that one apology is enough? And is that an invitation or an opening to pull them aside afterwards and be like, hey, I noticed you came in with like a whole lot of anxious energy, or you seemed a little frantic, you seemed a little off when you arrived. Like, no worries, you didn't miss anything, but are you okay? What's going on? It's not our responsibility, but I think the more opportunities we have to like reflect back to people, to let them know, hey, I see you. I see that energy. I see that behavior. I see these patterns. You okay? What is going on? And depending on the relationship, obviously, I'm using a meeting, like a work example. So that may be a little bit harder to approach on like a personal level, like a level of a little more vulnerability or depth. But if that relationship is a little bit more established, or maybe it's a friendship or a family member, someone you know a little bit more, this could be an opportunity to call them into this conversation and say, hey, I'm just noticing that you're like overly apologetic. And I'm just kind of wondering, because it seems like, you got really worked up and you were being really hard on yourself. Can you tell me more about that? What's it like for you when you show up late to a meeting? Like, what's going on? What is it about being late that is stressful for you? Because I know for me, like, I can definitely get into my head when I'm late, and I can definitely be pretty hard on myself when I'm late, and that is something I'm working on. So there's so many ways to approach that conversation, depending on the relationship, depending on the setting, depending on the circumstance, the specific circumstance. And I would just urge you to approach it with curiosity, compassion. There's no room for shame or like guilt tripping or blaming or like calling someone out, like being like, whoa, because that won't really be helpful. But the stories for me, they're actually quite exhausting to feel like, oh, I'm just in this meeting and now I'm expected to take care of this person because they were late. Like that's kind of my like lizard brain. The the burnt out brain, or the just like, come on, brain. So I mean, it's also, if we are on the outside looking in, maybe good to check some of those initial thoughts, those first thoughts that may be a little bit more steeped in emotion, or maybe a little bit of judgment comes up, and maybe we don't want to necessarily approach the conversation when we're still in that headspace. Maybe give it a little bit of time. And I know for me, that's one strategy that I'm learning across the board in my life, is to just give things more time, give myself more time. One thing I heard, I don't know where or when, but the concept of a 24-hour rule, like unless it's an emergency or, explicitly time sensitive, can you give it 24 hours? Can you give yourself 24 hours to just collect your thoughts? Because for me, I know that I can definitely have sort of the emotional reaction before the like rational, logical reaction. Logic for me takes a little bit more time. And I do fully subscribe to getting objective, neutral, outside opinions. So bringing it back to the dog sitting example, I also, in that time we spent away from the conversation, I consulted with my husband and, tried to gain more perspective, because I was approaching it from a very like triggered, feeling like my boundaries were being crossed, very tunnel vision type mentality. And he was like, maybe there's a win-win situation. And I'm like, are you crazy? Oh, actually, maybe that sounds really nice. Yeesh. So, as always, I am not approaching this as an expert. Let's be clear there. This is firmly rooted in my own lived experiences, my own observations, my own journey, and I truly do want to approach this work as a friend, someone in your corner, someone who understands, someone who gets it, and someone who is still, I'm very invested in my own learning, growth, self-discovery. It's all there. It's all happening. Before I end, I did want to make just I wanted to take a moment of recognition, not for just me, but for you. I have been doing this podcast now for about a month and a half, which is pretty cool. And as it stands right now, I'm going to share the raw numbers with you. As it stands right now, I have 31 subscribers on Spotify and 16 on Apple Podcasts. And that, like, I guess I have still had and have no idea what to expect. I have no idea who those people are. I know who some of you are, but that is quite phenomenal if I really think about it. Okay, quick math. That's 47 people who are choosing to subscribe and listen. And I'm looking around in my apartment and I'm like, damn, if there's like 47 people in here right now watching me talk and listening to what I'm saying, that's quite the audience. So I really just want to extend my deepest gratitude. I am so grateful to all of you listening and for subscribing and believing in this little project of mine. The other optics I will share is Instagram, which if you're not following, I'd love to connect with you over there at peoplepleaser.pod, at peoplepleaser, all one word, .pod. And as of today, I'm at 103 followers, which again, I don't want to discount like the first 103 of you to show up and support me and to be open to this conversation. And I just don't want to ever lose sight of the support and that really good feeling that gives me, and to just constantly realign with my purpose of connection and community. And I just want to give each, 47 subscribers and 103 Instagram followers, I want to give you just like so much recognition. And I just wanted to say thank you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and for trusting some of these thoughts that I'm sharing. So that's it for today. Thank you for being here. I hope this added some meaning or value to your day. Thanks for taking me along in the car or on your run or while you're cooking dinner, whatever it may be. I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.